Welcome into the latest Mac and Mose. Andy McNamara, joined by the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Mosley. We're here to preview Oregon's road trip, upcoming Pac-12 matchup against the Cal Golden Bears. Oregon comes into this one at 2-4, a 4-game losing streak, which we haven't seen in a very long time around these parts. Cal is coming off of a bye week also. The conference typically schedules it so when teams play these Thursday, or in this case a Friday night game, both teams have an opportunity to have a little bit of extra time to prepare. They're coming off a defeat at Oregon State, which at least in the early part of the season looked like maybe the lowest team in the Pac-12. So both of these teams searching for some answers. This will be the third game in 7 for the Ducks, where they're going up against an air raid offense. So they should sort of expect, I guess, what Cal's going to try to do to them, but they need to come up with a different solution than we've seen the last 2 times they've faced these type of teams.
Yeah, if they could repeat the result against Cal last year and Jared Goff, the number 1 NFL draft pick, that would be great. Oregon's secondary played fantastic last year. Ducks beat Cal, and they'd like nothing more than to be able to repeat that performance. But there's 2 problems with that. One, the Oregon's run defense against the other 2 air raid teams, the other 2 kind of Mike Leach coaching tree air raid teams, Virginia and Washington State. Oregon's run defense was porous, as it's been in much of the season, and so those offenses were able to find balance. They didn't have to just throw the ball, and Cal has some running backs that they can hurt you with in the run game. The other thing is Oregon's just the confidence has to be waning at this point a little bit for this defense. And so even though, they did play well against Cal last year, simply saying, hey, do that again is a tough order, I think, right now for a team that's probably doubting itself just a little bit.
The coaching staff, head coach Mark Helfrich, defensive coordinator Brady Hoke, have both mentioned that they might be simplifying things a little bit this week. What do you think that means? Do you think that they're going to maybe trust the secondary a little bit more and play straight up instead of going into that nickel that seems to just entice the opponent to run the ball?
I assume a couple of things, and I don't know for certain on any of this, but what I would guess is they're going to play a little more straight up man coverage. I know Brady Hoke said coming out of the Washington State game that he felt like maybe he tried to do too much switching between man and zone, and maybe he should have just trusted his guys a little bit more to play man in that game. So it wouldn't shock me if they just tried to trust guys to play a little more straight up man coverage in this game. But there's also the issue of disguises too. I mean, college defenses would love to be as confusing for offenses as NFL defenses in terms of showing one thing pre-snap, and doing something after the ball is snapped. And you get guys' heads swimming with, hey, what are we basically pretending to show, and then what are we actually playing? Again, for a defense whose confidence is probably not great right now, you may not want to overwhelm them with too much. So those are a couple of things I'd look at, but potentially they could streamline and cut back on to try to put this defense in a position to have some success.
Also on defense for the Ducks, the linebacker spots have been in flux throughout the year for one reason or another, be it injuries, be it guys emerging or guys not performing to what they're expected to do. We've seen a lot of Kaulana Apelu in practice this week, a guy that is a little bit undersized, but coaches have loved him from the day he's been here, just his work ethic and his enthusiasm out on the field. So he's a guy that might, the Ducks just seem to be searching for somebody in the middle of their defense to kind of spark things a little bit and take some of the pressure off guys like Troy Dye, who has been depended on to do so much. One man trying to play almost 3 positions at least it appears at times.
Yeah, Pelu's a guy who, with his energy level, his enthusiasm, he's a guy who could potentially provide a spark. So I would expect to see him play quite a bit. Keith Sims, another guy, true freshman, middle linebacker, who looks like he's a little bit more in the mix. He's been kind of working his way in the last few weeks, but looks like he's even more in the mix this week. He's a guy who down the road, he's got that big frame and he can move. He's a potential kind of middle of the defense run plugger for a couple years down the road. It kind of has had some bright spots and some trial by fire moments the last few weeks. But hey, a guy like that, get him some playing time, get him some reps. See what you got, because he's a guy who could be a regular going forward.
Interesting. I thought about this morning. You haven't heard a lot of talk about Justin Herbert making his first road start.
Yeah.
Maybe some of that is just the fact that there was a bye week in between his first start and this one. It also might, the one thing I came up with was, maybe the fact that he played, so confidently. It was a lopsided result, Oregon getting waxed by Washington. We're not going to sugarcoat that, but just his presence out there, his ability to get through the game against an extremely impressive defense has maybe sort of taken the spotlight off of him a little bit, but that's still a pretty big storyline. A true freshman quarterback mid-season making a road start in the Pac-12.
Yeah, if I could try to speculate kind of what, why for the media that hasn't been that much of a storyline, I would think that one element of that is that coaches and players have expressed so much confidence in him that he's handled himself not like a typical true freshman since he got here, and particularly the last couple of weeks. That maybe the perception isn't that he's a green true freshman that's about to take his lumps in his first road start. That he's a guy who's more prepared for that and might not suffer some of the same pitfalls that a young guy would have. The other thing is, California is not the toughest road environment in the conference.
Strawberry candy.
If you were going to Pullman or someplace like that,
Utah.
Utah for sure, Arizona. You might expect maybe that to be more of a storyline, but unless the Cal fans really show up in force and are a different tone than usual, it shouldn't feel like the most hostile road environment.
Also on offense, Royce Freeman appears to be back at full strength. He's a guy that just really hasn't gotten going this year. Missed the bulk of the Nebraska game, missed the Colorado game. He's had a couple other games where he just hasn't had that many touches. He's left for one reason or another. When he is at full strength and is carrying the load, Oregon has success, and we really haven't. We saw glimpses of it in the first couple games this season, but we haven't seen it since. Playmakers, we talked about it in the preseason, this wide receiver group, how talented they were. They're not making the plays that I think a lot of people expected. Charles Nelson, I tweeted this yesterday, came into the season 8 receiving touchdowns on 40 grabs in his career. He has 31 catches this year without a score. He's become a little bit more of a possession receiver this year, but still, a guy with his skill set, you expect to find the end zone at some point. So it's not a lot of people want to point fingers at one area of the team or another, but I think there's plenty of blame to go around in terms of just maybe not meeting expectations at this point of the year.
For sure. Going back to the running game, I think, another element where you don't worry so much about Herbert is Oregon should be able to run the heck out of the ball against this Cal team. And frankly, whether Freeman's in there or not, I mean, we saw the success that Tony James and Kanai and Taj Griffin had against Cal last year. I mean, I think they all averaged combined over 10 yards a carry on the rushes they got against Cal. So I believe Cal's the worst rush defense in the country. So you'd expect Royce to get his yards. You'd expect those other guys to be able to get yards too and take pressure off Justin Herbert. Maybe this is a game where everything finally starts clicking for this Oregon offense. I do wonder, after the layoff, we see it in bowl games sometimes where you expect a game to be really, really high scoring, but then you've got a little bit of a layoff between games, and so it takes the offenses a while to get going. I wonder if we'll see some of that. The over/under for this game is like 87, which I don't fault anyone for thinking based on the statistically these two defenses. That's a massive number. But it wouldn't shock me too to see, kind of like we've seen in some past bowl games, that we expect to be really, really high scoring. That national championship game against Auburn, for instance, where it's 41 points scored combined. I doubt it'll be that, but it wouldn't shock me if it took both offenses a little bit to get going. Then again, if Oregon can just hand the ball off to Royce Freeman or Tony Brooks James or whoever and just run right up the middle, maybe they can establish some things. Finally score early, score often, and establish some momentum offensively.
Yeah, I agree. I think scoring early, if Oregon gets the ball first. One thing that they were so successful at in past seasons, it's been, I need to look it up, but it's been a long time since the Ducks put the ball in the end zone on their opening possession. And so much of the tempo and the blur offense is predicated on, being able to put your foot on the gas, as Coach Helfrich likes to say, and, make the other team come to you. And it's been in reverse. And so we'll have to see if Oregon continues to opt to get the ball first, if they win the toss. I mean, if I'm Cal, it's hard to know what they're going to do. But at some point, from a personal level, I'd love to see Oregon get the kickoff to start the second half, because too many times this year we've seen them down at halftime, and then the opponent gets the ball first in the second half, and it makes for a real uphill battle.
Yeah, absolutely. If you score on that first possession, as you said, that strategy worked great. But if you don't score on that first possession, and again, we've seen some late first half problems that this team has had, and like you say, every time it seems like every game the opponent's getting the kickoff that second half, and then what was a 3-point halftime deficit becomes a 10-point deficit, or a touchdown becomes 2 touchdowns, and now that's just a big hole to try to dig out of, particularly for an offense that has been good but not up to the exceedingly great standards that have been set around here.
So we're starting the second half of the season at Cal. It's Friday. It is a 7:30 kickoff on ESPN, a national broadcast. And while it will be a little bit late on the East Coast, I think there'll be a lot of eyeballs on it, thanks to that 87 number for the over/under. It's just, I'm not a gambler, but I do pay attention to those things because I think it's always remarkable how good the odds makers are at being able to decipher information. So it's going to be potentially a very entertaining offensive filled game, Oregon and Cal. In the meantime, if you have any comments for us, you can leave them below on either Facebook or YouTube, however you're watching this. You can also get to us on Twitter. I'm at McNamara UO. He is at Duck Football. We'll wrap this up later. Until next time, we'll see you.